Jonathan Watt with the Tara Group International. We hope you're enjoying our content, and if you are, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel. We've been doing a mini-series on Christianity in the early centuries, and I'm going to move a little bit ahead to the period of Viking Christianity. Among the Vikings, faith in the midst of transition. You know, the popular imagination often portrays the Vikings as fierce pagans who abruptly abandoned their gods once Christianity arrived in Scandinavia. Now, according to this simplified narrative, missionaries preached, kings converted, and paganism disappeared almost overnight. But the historical reality is far more complex and, frankly, far more interesting. Christianity among the Vikings did not arrive as a clean replacement for Norse religion, but as a slow, uneven, and sometimes deeply entangled process marked by overlap, experimentation, and negotiation. Rather than a sudden conversion, the Christianization of Scandinavia between the 8th and 12th centuries, roughly, unfolded as a rather messy transition, visible in hybrid symbols, mixed burial practices, and religious objects that reflect a world in flux. So it was a gradual encounter, not a single moment. The early encounters between Vikings and Christianity occurred through trade, travel, and of course, raiding, not organized missions campaigns. Viking merchants moved along river routes into Christian Europe, while raiders encountered monasteries, churches, and took Christian captives. These interactions exposed Scandinavian peoples to Christian symbols and stories and practices long before any formal conversion would begin. By the 9th century, Christianity was already present on the fringes of Viking society. Christian captives, traders, and settlers lived among Christian communities. Of pagans mixed with Christians, such that some Vikings were baptized abroad for political or economic reasons, only to return home to societies still rooted in Norse cosmology. So conversion in this context was not an all or nothing decision, but rather a layering of successive identities. And it involved kings and power and politics of conversion. While Christianity spread gradually at the local level, royal conversions also played a significant role in shaping the public acceptance of Christianity. Scandinavian kings often adopted Christianity for political or diplomatic reasons, forming allegiances with Christian rulers, let's say in England or the German states or what would later become to be known as France. Kings such as Harald Bluetooth of Denmark in the 10th century publicly embraced Christianity, commissioning rune stones that proclaimed the new faith. One famous stone declares that Harald, quote, made the Danes Christian. Yet archaeological evidence suggests that this claim reflected aspiration more than reality. Pagan practices persisted, not surprisingly, for generations, even under Christian rulers. But there was a royal endorsement that created space for Christianity to expand. It didn't immediately displace traditional beliefs. Instead, it added a layer to the landscape, one that coexisted sometimes uneasily with the older religious traditions. Now, the rune stones and their hybrid symbols are insightful. One of the clearest windows we get into this transitional period comes from rune stones, many of which blend Christian and pagan imagery. You'll see crosses on them carved alongside Norse motifs, inscriptions that invoke Christ, but using language shaped by heroic traditional Scandinavian culture. And these stones suggest not a confusion, but a kind of a, well, if you will, creative adaptation, the cross could function as a protective symbol, a little bit like Thor's hammer, while Christ was sometimes imagined as a powerful warrior or a divine lord rather than as the suffering figure that came to be emphasized in later medieval theology. Now, in some regions, Thor's hammer pendants and cross pendants were worn simultaneously, indicating that individuals may have embraced Christianity while still wanting to honor the older gods, or at least hedging their spiritual bets, if you will. Faith during this period was not at all neatly defined. And you can see this in the burial practices as well. Burial customs offer another glimpse into the complexity of this big picture Viking conversion. Early Christian graves in Scandinavia often include grave goods, a practice discouraged by Christian authorities, but deeply rooted in Norse tradition. Bodies might be oriented east-west in Christian fashion, and yet buried with weapons or jewelry or household items that spoke more of the Norse cultural traditions. And then there's ship burials, long associated with pagan beliefs about the afterlife. These continued even after the Christian symbols entered the cultural vocabulary. And in some cases, crosses appear on grave markers above burials that otherwise follow pagan patterns. So these practices reveal that conversion was not simply about adopting new beliefs, but about reinterpreting inherited rituals. The dead were still honored according to familiar customs, even as new theological ideas were taking hold. So Christian missionaries did play an important role, particularly from the 10th century onward in this mixed landscape. So there's figures such as Ansgar, known as the Apostle to the North, who traveled through Denmark and Sweden in the 9th century, establishing early Christian communities. And yet Ansgar's missions met with limited success, and many early churches actually disappeared after his departure. Later missionaries, supported by royal power, achieved greater institutional stability. Monasteries, bishoprics, parish systems were starting to emerge in this period, anchoring Christianity in the social and political fabric of Scandinavian life. Even so, missionaries often adapted their message to local contexts, recognizing that persuasion required patience rather than force. So, moving from myth to memory, by the 12th century, Christianity had become the dominant religious framework across much of Scandinavia. Pagan temples were being abandoned, Christian law codes enforced religious norms, and Norse myths were preserved not as a living religion, but more as a cultural memory, recorded by Christian authors such as Snorri Sturluson. Yet the traces of transition remain Christian. Scandinavia retained a deep appreciation for historic and heroic storytelling, honor culture, and community identity values shaped during the centuries of religious overlap. The Viking conversion story is therefore not one of simple replacement, but of transformation. Now the question is, why does all this Viking conversion story matter to us today? Well, the Christianization of the Vikings challenges some modern assumptions about religious change. It reminds us that faith is often adopted gradually, relationally, and imperfectly, shaped as much by culture as by ideal doctrine. The process was neither tidy nor uniform, and it certainly did not follow a single authoritative script. The history offers a valuable perspective for contemporary conversations about belief and doubt and identity. The Vikings remind us that spiritual transitions often involve some ambiguity, and that such ambiguity can be fertile ground for meaning-making rather than failure. Now, for readers interested in exploring the topic further, we have The Conversion of Scandinavia by Anders Winroth. It's available on Amazon. It's an accessible and nuanced account of how Christianity took root in the Viking world. So, drawing on archaeology, historical texts, and material culture, Winroth presents conversion as a social and cultural process rather than as a single historical event. Now, for some final reflection. Christianity among the Vikings clearly did not arrive with a clean break from the past, but emerged through encounter and adaptation and reinterpretation, a faith shaped in dialogue with long-standing traditions rather than being imposed upon them. The rune stones, burial practices, the hybrid symbols of the era bear witness to a people navigating profound conceptual change, sometimes with creativity and resilience. And in their story, we can be reminded that religious transformation is rarely instantaneous. It unfolds in a lived experience. It's slowly, unevenly, and deeply human in all of its aspects. So a note from Atara Group International: this exploration of faith and culture and transition resonates with you. Atara Group International partners with individuals, churches, and organizations to engage historical insight in meaningful ways, and through program development, pastoral coaching, keynote presentations, and retreat leaderships, Atara Group supports thoughtful engagement with faith traditions, especially in these times of ongoing change and in need of much discernment.